Welcome to Feminine Power Time, where wisdom, leadership, and well-being meet. And welcome to our special season 8.5, which we're calling the Season of Light. I'm Jennifer Alexander, longtime student and friend of Christina Rilo, and your guest host for this Season of Light. Depending on where you are in the world, this might be a summer of light if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, or a winter of light if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, or if you're listening later, you might be in a different season, but regardless, we're all in a season when we're connected to cyclical living and could use more light as we navigate the now while we create the next. Our intention for this season of light is to create a sanctuary of wisdom where you can tune in and receive wisdom, insight, inquiries, and recharge your light, keeping your radiance bright. We've curated this season with the overarching theme of staying light. And over the next 9 episodes, we'll be weaving wisdom from past episodes with reflections from everyday life to support you to stay light amidst the swirl of our present time. And what is the definition of staying light? It means embracing our power to stay centered, calm, and clear, to engage in the practices and perspectives that support us to be radiant, resilient, and rooted, even in the midst of the swirl of the outside world. It's not about spiritual bypassing. Instead, it's a way of living and utilizing our practices in order to come back to our light even when we get wobbly. And let's be honest, we all get wobbly. We're human beings having a human experience on this beautiful planet Earth. It's not about being perfect and maintaining some high level of vibrational consciousness 24/7. It's about being human, having emotions, having thoughts, and seeing them in order to transform them and elevate from wherever we are, so that we can show up differently as leaders in our own lives, with those we guide and influence, and in how we respond to the swirl around us. So, to begin our season of light, we're reflecting on and tuning into this specific inquiry. What sustains your radiance? What sustains your radiance? Today, we'll tune into the wisdom that Christine originally shared 2 years ago on this topic. I think you'll be amazed to hear how the wisdom is so resonant with what's needed here and now. But that's how wisdom works, right? It's timeless. The banana world, as Christine calls it, is arguably even more bananas now than 2 years before. And as we navigate the river of change, our life raft is to stay light. We're dedicating this season of light to supporting the supporters, the leaders, those of you who are in the world making a difference, choosing to be part of what we like to call Team Elevate. Feminine Power Time is here for those who are here on Earth at this moment in time to reimagine the way we in the world work, and as a result, create different realities for ourselves and those people, organizations, and parts of society that we have the power to guide and influence. We do this through our personal leadership, our voices, our choices, and our presence. It's how we show up and move through this time. Oftentimes, those of you who are here, you're supporting, guiding, influencing people, whether it's your children as a parent, your team in an organization, or even the people you come into contact with every day at the grocery store. We elevate the collective through elevating our own vibration. And that's it. That's our intention with this season of light, to create a space where you can reconnect with your radiance, elevate your vibration, and then go back out into the world from that place while holding your lightness, your elevated vibration, and connection with the divine. So we'll begin today with an exploration of what sustains your radiance. You may even want to jot that inquiry down in a journal or on a sticky note, or just take a mental note. What sustains my radiance? And here's Christine.
Welcome to Feminine Power Time. Turn off the chatter and tune in to what matters. This is Christina Rilo, your host, and today I welcome you to episode number 185, entitled Stay Light. This will be the first in a series that we're going to do all about staying light, exactly as it says. And I'll say a little bit more about that in the moment. This first one is called Restore Your Radiance. And we are diving into this series, which is summertime here in the Northern Hemisphere, winter time down there in the Southern hemisphere. Did I say that right? Northern hemisphere, it's summer. Southern hemisphere, it is winter. And this was the kind of the universe's guidance to me when I tapped in about 2 weeks ago, and I said, what is the message that we need to hear, and what can we stay focused on in, the continuation of these crazy, chaotic, transformational times? And it was 2 words, because the universe speaks like that to us. I always say the universe and the divine never speaks in paragraphs. It's like a sentence or 2 words, and the words were very clear: stay light. So what does that mean? Well, the good news is that as luck would have it, as fortune would have it, way back in January when we did the Emerge visioning process, which we do every year, part of that process, what came out for me was that this was a year that I really wanted to study radiance. And just think about that word for a moment, radiance, Radiance. It's one of those words, you've heard it before. But what is it really? And it's not just about having shiny hair, although we like to have shiny hair because it means we're actually healthy, or what makeup you put on, or whatever it might be. This is about a light that is within each of us, you and I, that has and matters so much, because radiance impacts our relationships. It impacts our career, our magnetism, our health, our vitality, our intuition. I mean, so many things, our capacity to give our gifts. And at this time in the world, we need more light than ever. But how do we unlock that radiance within us? How do we restore our radiance? And do you even have any idea? Like, have you checked in on your radiance? Do you even know where it exists in your body? Do you know how to cultivate it, how to support it, how to sustain it? And do you know what's draining it? You've ever seen a person walk into a room, or these days go onto Zoom, and you're like, wow, you're just shining, you're just bright. And you're feeling and sensing that person's energy. And this is not woo-woo, this is not shoo-shoo, poo-woo, hooty-dooty-dooty. This is like finally humanity is getting, and science is proving what the sages have known forever, which is that even though we can't see that light with our eyes, like, can you imagine if we were all walking around and we could see each other's radiance with our eyes? I mean, that would be a little much, wouldn't you? If you could like see the light emanating off of me, like, what color is your light? What color is your light? And if you've ever like done one of those aura pictures where they take the colors of your lights, and that maybe you've seen that, but that would be like a lot. So we don't need to see it with our eyes. But we do need to start believing that it's real, start sensing it and treating it as real as, like, you think about, oh, I brush my teeth. Oh, I brush my hair. Oh, I make sure that all my inside parts are healthy. Like, we're so focused on the physical realm, in especially how we approach well-being. And even now people are finally talking about mental wellness. Oh yeah, we should pay attention to that, right? And yet, what we do here at Feminine Power Time is we go deeper. We get to the root of things, and then we apply timeless wisdom to our modern lives, businesses, careers, relationships, everything, because we are whole people, not people who separate ourselves. This is my professional self, and this is my personal self. This is work, and this is life. We don't do that here, because that is a setup for duality, reality, and insanity. So what we're going to do over the next couple sessions is we're going to dive into radiance and staying light, and what drains and sustains that radiance, and what do we do when the world goes topsy-turvy, or we're in relationships that are challenging, and our radiance kind of dims or gets, depressed. And how can we cultivate it? How can you cultivate it as a practice? It's not like, oh my God, now there's another thing I have to think about and take care of. That's not how we do it around here. It's like, no, this is actually something that's going to give you permission to actually live your life in a rhythm, in a structure, focused on what matters to you. Because when you start to understand what you actually need to sustain your radiance, which is your light, and it makes me think of that Elton John song that he wrote for Princess Diana forever ago. Big fan of Elton. He's on his last tour right now, which is like your light went out too soon. I think it's like a candle in the wind, right? And so that light that you and I have, it's the light of our soul. There's a great song, a great mantra. Maybe I'll put this in the show notes called Light of My Soul, that is done by Ajit Kaur. And when I teach Radiance in my councils, my feminine leadership councils, or in anything I'm teaching, we often use that mantra as a daily practice. So I will put that in the show notes and on the post. And it's the light of our soul. And that soul is what's missing on the planet right now. So when we look at family systems, education system, government system, politics, business, all of these things, part of what's missing and what's been kind of sucked out over the last 300 to 5,000 years, depending on how you count, is soul, which has nothing to do, not nothing, but is not about religion. It's about the light of your soul that in your very presence. Think of when you're in the presence of somebody who has a lot of radiance. I think of my yoga teacher that I did my first Kundalini yoga teacher training with, Krishna Kaur. When I studied with her, I moved to LA to do my 9-month teacher training with her because she was like in her mid to late 70s and she was so radiant. Had so much, not just vitality, and we'll talk about that today too, that, we talk a lot about life force, which is connected to radiance, but not the same. She had so much of both. I'm like, when I'm 77, I want that. I'm going to go study with her. So that's what this series is about. And that's also not just what the series is about, but every time we come together, I'm committed to creating a frequency that you can tune into that allows you to, just like the subtitle, turn off the chatter, tune in to what matters. So how you and I go through this time, which could be years, very likely, that's what matters. So we need your light to stay bright. You need your radiance to stay strong. My job is bringing us the wisdom and then making it practical and knowing that you're not the only one out there doing this, right? Doing this together. All right, we just set ourselves up, you all, for the next 2 months or so to stay light. So I'm just going to invite you to take a stretch up. I'm taking a stretch up right now too with my whole body. And go ahead and do this. No one can see you. And even if someone can see you, who cares? Just go ahead and just raise yourself up and just elongate your whole body. And then stretch your arms out to the side and just open yourself up. We have a center radiance channel that runs through that center of your body. It's called the Shishmuna in yogic philosophy. And you can kind of think of it like a light rod, like almost like a lightsaber that runs through the center of your body. And if you just stretch up, sometimes I like to think of a tree, even like I imagine a tree has like just all this life force and all this light that runs through it. And then if you stretch out your arms to the side and kind of wiggle your fingers, that touches what's called your magnetic field. Or sometimes you'll hear people calling it your auric field. And it's your energy field. And this is where your radiance lives and emanates from. So as that radiance, and so the word radiance comes from radiant. And what radiance means, simply defined in the normal dictionary, is brightness or light. So your radiance is your brightness or your lightness. It also can be defined as emitting rays of light, shining and bright. And so did you ever think where does that come from in me, right? So literally, energetically, physically, psychically, you have running through you this cordon of light through the center. You also have around you a glow of light. If you think about, if you've ever seen some of those images that they do show in different religious paintings where you'll see a halo around their head, that is radiance. That's the radiance around the upper part of their body. But we actually have more than one of those centers. We have a center radiance around our heart. We have a center of radiance around what's called the crown. And then we have our whole magnetic field that also, and the lighter you are, the brighter you are. And we'll get into this in a couple sessions when we start to talk about what happens when how do you deal with the world when you get dimmed down or you get mucked up. The stronger that light is within you in that cordon of light, and the stronger that light field is in that full magnetic field, and the stronger it is around, the crown of your head and your heart, the more protected you are from picking up the muck of other people and taking on too much of the heaviness of the world. And it doesn't separate you. It's kind of like a force field that it disintegrates that heavier energy so that even if you're dealing with heavy things, it doesn't take you down. We're not starting there because we got to start here first with some of the basics. So just thinking about radiance as that. Here's some other I also just pulled because I'm an etymologist nut. So let me just tell you what the root is. So the Latin term radiant means to radiate light or to shine, or to beam or ray, a ray or beam. And scientifically, radiant energy is basically the energy that's emitted per unit time in a specified direction by a unit area of an emitting surface. Why, when I read scientific things like that, I'm like, I don't even know what they exactly just said. Some of you are more scientific and your brain might understand that more. I go more to the mystic and more to the root as a writer and a scribe. And I'm like, I get beam, I get ray, I get light, I get shine. And I'm sharing both of these because it is both of the mystical and the material world. So this is one of the other lenses that we use a lot here at Feminine Power Time, and I use in all of my leadership work. It's like we're working on that mystical realm, which is the unseen realm, and the material realm, which is the seen physical realm. So like you're talking about how you can see sometimes that people doesn't feel good, and you see the aspects of it, but you can't see the radiance, but you can sense it and you can feel it. So the reason I like to use mystical and material sometimes versus spiritual and physical is because people get wigged out about the word spiritual, and all of a sudden there's like a lot of baggage. And I do sometimes use that too, but a way that I kind of get around that to make it more of an agnostic conversation is to talk about the mystical and the material. And they're both really real. It's just most of us have most of the traditional training is all focused in the material realm. And it's not until you start to engage in mystery schools and other wisdom schools where you start to learn the mystical stuff. And you're like, oh my God, this is really real. And so I'm grateful that I found that very, very early in my life. And so one of the things I want to presence is the mystical definition of radiance. And I have a it's not a deal with the universe, but it is a request of the universe. And I share this with you right now. You can use it if you want. I say to the universe, give me the best systems that are the purest, and connect me with the teachers, guides that are purest in their energy. Because you can have a lot of charisma. So think about this way. You can meet a person who has a lot of charisma, and they do emit a certain energy. And that energy can be like a trance that makes people do stuff that seems a little crazy. So, if you kind of think about it historically, they call them the carpetbaggers or the snake charmers or whatever, and they'll use that charisma, but the light is distorted and the energy is distorted to manipulate and to control and to dominate and to have power over. The mystical teaching is you can use the light to free people or to control and manipulate people. So I don't want anything to do with any system that has any kind of, this is not pure. I always say if it has 5% fear or 5% manipulation or 5% control, it's still 5% fear or control. So I always say, give me the systems that are pure in heart and bring me the teachers and the guides who I can learn from or who I can study with, and whether that's the people that I let read my astrology chart or the people that I sit with, every quarter and say I get some wisdom from them through their intuition, they have to be pure. So one of those systems that I use for myself, and I actually use it with all of my individual clients, and I also use it in the feminine leadership council work that I do. And one of those is called the Gene Keys, and it was kind of downloaded by a man named Richard Rudd. And in that, there's a part of understanding your radiance specifically and how it works. And we're going to get into some of the ways I look at that. So I'm not going to get into how that system specifically works, but the way that Richard describes radiance, I think, is really helpful. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it here verbatim from his book called Genius, which is The Sphere of Radiance. So here's what he says. You may wonder why and how we can have light locked away inside us, which is radiance, light, right? It may seem fantastical or even whimsical. The truth is that every form in the universe is made of light. The emptiness around the form is the darkness from which the form arises as light. The emptiness around the form is the darkness from which the form arises as light. So this doesn't make darkness wrong. It's about the light actually comes through the darkness. The two principles belong to one another, constantly giving birth to each other, and at the same time defining each other. In your form, so you, I'm talking to you right now here, in your form, in my form, the body which lies wrapped around you, as you read or hear these words, there's a great inner light that's burning. So we're talking about that cordon of light that runs through you. Physical evolution occurs as this light moves collectively through all human forms, driving us forward in understanding, urging us not only to survive, but also to thrive as a species. So you can see why this matters at this time, because the more of us that can stay light, not meaning, we just, turn our head the other way, we spiritually bypass it. These are my words right now. Or we just, take a breath and meditate ourselves out of it. It's that in the face of wherever we're standing, if we can stay physically in that and spiritually in that, that's part of how evolution happens as a species, to move out of survival, which is where we've been operating from, again, between 300, 2,000, and 5,000 years. Or even if you go with the yogis, back even farther than that, but for some time. So he goes on. However, spiritual evolution underpins physical evolution. In fact, both forms of evolution are part of a single principle, with spiritual evolution as the seed. And so you can think of spiritual evolution also as evolution of consciousness, evolution of consciousness as the seed, and physical evolution following as the fruit. Spiritual evolution emerges in individuals as breakthrough. The inner light finds its way out of our DNA and floods our physical bodies. This is what we refer to as your radiance. Your radiance dictates your health, your vitality, and something even more nebulous, your aura, or your magnetic field, like we were talking about, that energy body around you. Your aura is the electromagnetic afterglow of your inner essence. Your aura is the electromagnetic afterglow of your inner essence. So again, think about that. Inner essence is that cordon of pureness within you. In the Buddhist tradition, they talk about what's called the diamond heart. And the diamond heart exists within the human heart. And it's a diamond because it's your essence. And nothing is supposed to touch that. You're never supposed to serve from that. And it can't break. That essence, no matter what, can never break. That fuels that cordon of light that runs in the middle of you. And then if you take your finger and you put your finger just right above your belly button, about an inch, that's where in yogic philosophy, they say that's where we're connected to our soul, right? The light of our soul that's connected to the timeless us. So these connection points, they charge up that cordon of light, and then that creates that afterglow in your magnetic field, in your electromagnetic field. And it's real, it's palpable, you can feel it. If you've ever seen someone walk into a room and you turn your head and you're like, who is that person? You're sensing their afterglow. And he goes on to say, it cannot be seen directly with the naked eye, but it can be sensed by human intuition. And I love this part. Your radiance also acts as the hidden instrument of your intuition. It warns you of potential threats in the energetic environment around you. And like a GPS, it guides you to finding the right people and the right experiences in life. So let's just take a breath and take a sip here. I'm going to get some water. So you can see why radiance and staying light matters to the collective, and being a being who can, as Thich Nhat Hanh said, if one person in the boat as they were, leaving as refugees could stay calm, the entire boat would calm. So this is similar in that if you and I can stay light, then more others can stay light too. And again, this is not a thing to do. Like, oh my God, I have to be strong and I have to stay light. Please do not do that. Do not do that. Do not do that. Do not do that. Because then you're just going to get wrinkles and you're going to get stressed out. This is not about that. This is about awareness. This is about proactive practice. This is about remembering like what actually fuels your radiance, right? So there's so much to do, so much work to be done, so many things that we're moving around in our lives. This is why I wrote Overwhelmed and Over It first, because I'm like, if we don't get this part right, this foundation of what we need to be sustained and centered and supported and held and guided, we cannot activate. You and I cannot activate our full power, presence, purpose. We can't. Relationships. Our light will burn out too soon. Princess Diana wasn't even 40 when she died. And so none of us are outside of that. But that doesn't mean that you and I have to get crazy about it or get depressed about it, or what's one of the greatest teachings about radiance is a function of stillness. Radiance is a function of stillness. So just write that down if you have a piece of paper. This is one of those wisdom bites. Remember, this is how wisdom works. This is a wisdom bite to contemplate. Again, wisdom doesn't talk in paragraphs. It talks in these sentences. So like, I'm studying radiance for the whole year. I introduced the Gene Keys and radiance into the feminine leadership councils, and every woman in that council is understanding more deeply what supports and what drains her radiance. And I'm going to give you one of the exercises we did this year. And then we're not just done with it. It's like, oh, this is actually part of like, this is the difference about feminine leadership. Feminine leadership, one of the 6 principles or realms, is personal sustainability and practice at the core. We start there. We start with that. So wherever you're at right now, just take a moment and just put your fingers like right on your sternum, right on your heart. 1 in 3 women are dying of heart disease. Men aren't far behind that. This has been going on for some time. So we're tired. And not just tired physically, we're tired energetically, emotionally, psychically. Take a breath. And maybe even physically. And that's the realm of life force. So life force is about your physical battery charge, your physical gas, like your tank, and you want to keep doing that. If you don't do the daily receiving practice, which we talk about all the time here, is in the Overwhelmed and Over It book, top 3 practices, which is check in on your life force every day, and then ask, what do you need to receive that day to keep your life force strong? You want to be doing that. You want to be checking that so you're not going into burnout and overwhelm. But radiance, while connected, is different. They're connected because radiance also has a big thing to do with your health and your vitality. Remember, in yogic philosophy, in yogic medicine, what the teaching is, the physical body is the last place burnout and disease shows up. The last place. So it shows up in your subtle bodies and your pranic bodies, your breath bodies first. So starting to develop a relationship with your radiance is actually going to help you start to tune into when your spirit, your heart might be feeling heavy, might be goobered up, might be mucked up, might be just drained from the compassion that you've given, from the love that you've given, the care that you're given. Like those are all drains, not like in a bad way, but they all take from our heart and our spirit. And so what you and I need to do is we need to make sure we're restoring not just our physical batteries, but the batteries of spirit. Your spirit, like your spirit. Think of your spirit like it's like your wings, your fluff, right? The batteries, the energy, the vitality, the brightness of your heart. The brightness of your soul. Sometimes we lose hope. We go into despair. I mean, it's really easy for that to happen. And because this is not, what we're all experiencing here on this planet right now is not new. This has been cultivated and culminating for hundreds and thousands of years. And so for those of us that are old souls, we're like, oh my God, we're soul tired, right? So this matters because of all of that. And, as Richard mentioned in the book, what is also clear is when your radiance is strong, your intuition is stronger, your capacity to magnetize the harmonious invitations, experiences, people into your life, which is also part of what we talk about here at Feminine Power Time, is like, this is about doing things in connection and collaboration, not having to go out and kill the meat and drag it home. All right. So you're good. All right. Let me take a sip. I think we've set the foundation, yes, for what radiance is. And just think about that. It's like thinking of like there's this light inside of you, right? That's just like ready to burst out, ready to open up to. And I kind of think of it like Richard talks about it being in the DNA, and I think of it that way too. And I also kind of think of it like a time capsule, right? So you have a time capsule within you. I have one too, in which different parts of our genius, different parts of our superpowers, different parts of our gifts unlock. And it's like we're timed in unison with the universe. And so like part of why we do the power pause probably like forever, and it is one of not just the top 3 practices to stay out of burnout and overwhelm, but it's also how we stay on focus and path and purpose and focus on the right things in the right time that are aligned versus things that we could give a lot of energy to, but then won't have the return or just aren't ready to take root. Is that by really tuning in, it's like, okay, what's time to unlock and what's wanting to unlock and where you want to be creating from, where you want to be creating your life from, your sacred life, and where you want to be doing your sacred work from. And so part of that was moving myself and moving Noah to Asheville, where we're at right now, as a potential place to root. And now that I'm here, I'm working on my website and other things that I've been, wanting to do for a year and a half, but it's hard to move yourself physically and move the focus of your sacred work. So that more of the work I do around leadership and all the work that's in Overwhelmed and Over It and wellness and burnout and working differently and all of that can be more seen now that organizations are finally willing to admit what I've been talking about for over a decade. Why are we working this way? This is ridiculous. Actually, 15 years since I stopped being an employee and became an entrepreneur and consulted. Like, we don't have to be in these offices all the time. We don't have to work this way. Humans made the systems, which means we can change them. And it took the pandemic and all the things that happened. It was like to shake up and wake up. And then people say, yeah, I'm not going back. Like, we proved what it was so evident to me 15 years ago, and I'm sure others even before that. But this is what it takes for people to wake up and break through. They got to break down. It's like, I don't understand exactly why we're like this as humans. But the thing is, you and I, like, if you're here, you've been breaking down to break through for some time. So you and I, dear one, we get to like grow and stretch from light now. Yes, there are going to be things that we got to work with and look at, but we don't like have to go to the depths of our soul and like, suffer and like, whoa, like we can actually say, all right, I see the things within me that are wanting to shift and change and grow and release and patterns or habits or relationships or ways things used to be. And I'm good. I'm going to shed those. And I'm going to stay light. That this isn't, I keep saying to all of the women leaders I work with and all the leaders I work with, this isn't that. What patterns are showing up that might be from before, what situations that might be showing up from before, whether it's buying a house or changing a job or navigating your relationships. This is not that, meaning it's not what it was before. It looks like that, and in some ways it is, but you're at a choice point. Do you choose the path of suffering, or do you choose the path of light? And light doesn't mean it's all unicorns and not challenging. It'll be like a good yoga class. One that stretches you, one that bends you, one that makes you breathe, one that, elevates you. That's one of my favorite words. That's why I use it for so much of my leadership work, is that it elevates your frequency. It elevates your consciousness. That's what's possible for us all right now. So what do you think? You in? Okay, so let's reveal here what sustains and supports your radiance. So we've just talked about all of it's at the meta, at the collective, at the deeper mystical, spiritual, material, all of it. Now let's bring it personal, because that's what we're here for, right? We're here to make it personal and make it practical. And so this is the inquiry. I want you to write this down. Like, actually put this in your journal, write it down on a piece of paper, and I want you to contemplate it these next couple weeks between now and when we come together again. Okay? So here it is. What sustains and supports my radiance? What sustains and supports my radiance? So remember that one of the ways we access wisdom is by making an inquiry. We make that inquiry of ourselves, and we make that inquiry to the universe, to our own inner field and to the bigger field. Like, it's not about having an answer. So in the material world, it's like, I have a question, I make a question, I get an answer. And in that world, it's so driven on certainty, which isn't bad to have question answer. Like, how do I get to the store? It's like, this is how you get to the store. Like, you don't want to sit around and contemplate that, right? For 2 weeks, how do I get to the store? So there's like, when you're working in the linear and you're just wanting to, create and work from what you've known before, question answer, great. But when you are actually trying to elevate and reimagine and redesign and do things differently, question answer, not as helpful. So we make these inquiries. And what I like to do is I like to take a blank section of my journal and write the inquiry in the center of it or on one page of it. And I actually have it sitting right here. I made it this all the way back in January. And I just wrote the question, what supports and sustains my radiance? Next week, next time we gather, we will dive into what drains and depletes and distorts your radiance, because you want to know that too. But first, we want to start here. So when I ask that question, and just take a moment and maybe put your hand on your heart. And if you can, even put one on your belly. Your hand connects you to when you put it on your heart, it connects you to your heart, to your emotion, to that deeper feeling and sensing within you, and also like your desires and what really nourishes you. From a self-love perspective, it's where self-pleasure also comes, the things that bring you joy. So there are some common things that we know about radiance that is true for all of us. One of the things that supports and sustains our radiance is joy. I always say joy is like food for the soul. That's why we put the other hand on our belly. And if you put one hand on your belly with your finger 1 inch above your navel, your hands spread out kind of across your whole belly, and then your pinky kind of sitting on your pubic bone, that will connect you to that whole center, the creative center, the center where we need to feel nourished and nurtured and grounded and rooted. So we can't be radiant if we're not rooted. That's another thing. Like, we need to feel rooted in ourselves, in relationship. We need to feel safe. That's actually part of it. Like, think of a tree. Like, when you look at a tree, have you ever looked at a tree and it's like it sparkles and you can kind of see the glow of it and it kind of stands out from other trees? If you have never done that, try it. It's really fascinating. That tree is deeply rooted. And like the oak tree is a great example. It can only grow as big, up and wide as it grows deep. We're the same. So there's these common things that are like, okay, joy, that feeds my soul, that feeds my heart, it nourishes me, it nurtures me. Some other things that are really common around radiance is that because radiance is a function of stillness, our radiance, it increases its lightness when we slow down inside ourselves. Radiance and busy, frenetic, do not go hand in hand. Thinking of a woman who I did leadership, first personal transformation coaching for, and then leadership work with her and her team. And she was just stuck. Every time I would see her, she would look more and more frazzled. And you could just tell, like, her hair is standing on edge. And there's actually in traditional Chinese medicine, one of your energy centers and bodies is called your Shen. It's your spirit. And when your Shen is whacked out, like, your hair kind of stands on edge. Your hair, you look like you stuck your finger in an electric socket, right? That's what she would look like. And of course, she didn't know what Shen was until I told her what Shen was. And look at yourself in the mirror. You know, when you're like that, like you're not rooted, and you can't be rooted even if, like, you're moving. It's like, because you're moving so fast and you're reacting to everything. And so, like, getting her rerooted in her practice, like, that was something that really sustained and supported her radiance. And that's also, I actually believe, is true for all of us. I think a practice that is there, it's part of what keeps us centered. So the wisdom teaching is, the more settled you are in your own skin, the more in harmony you are with the earth, the more grounded you become, and that regulates and harmonizes your electromagnetic field, which is sometimes called the Schumann resonance or resonance, with the resonance and electromagnetic field of the natural cycles. Your gifts more naturally come out, synchronicities occur, and your spirit, your heart, your then physical being and your mental being reflect that which is happening at that deeper level. This is why if we only focus on our physical well-being and our mental well-being, you still won't have it. You need the mental, you need the slowing down, you need the mental part, but really the slowing down, it happens at all levels: emotional, mental, physical. And really the only way that it happens truly to be, like, fully unlocking your radiance is to be rooted in something bigger than you. It could be rooted in nature, rooted in home, rooted in what's called in Celtic wisdom anamkaras, the relationships with the people you feel at home with. Home is one of those things that all people need. And it is your sanctuary that you live in. It is the people that you are, that those anamkaras. It's also your own body, your own being, and being authentically your own essence. So just writing that word down as well, and what rooted means to you. So what can you root into that would support your radiance to thrive, to open, to unlock? And just taking another breath, and this time maybe close your eyes again. Or you can just listen to my voice, because I am asking you and inviting you to not just listen to this podcast, but to really take this inquiry: what supports and sustains my radiance? and actually start to write this out on a piece of paper. And I'm going to give you what you can do with it after that. But to do that, it might be kind of like, how do I even get in there, right? So here's how you can take notes on this, or you can just listen to this. So the first place, if you imagine yourself standing in the center of that piece of paper, or standing, next to a tree, and you're looking around a field, and you're going to look around and tap into all of these different parts and make the inquiry again and again and again, so that you're looking at all the different parts of you. So it's like you might say, okay, the first part, what sustains and supports my radiance? And just take a look at your physical body self, What supports your radiance in your physical body? And then staying on the physical realm, but think of it more like what materially supports your radiance. So for me, having a home that I can just relax into, where I can feel nestled and nurtured, is important. It actually supports my radiance. I can't live where there's not beauty. I wouldn't be able to do my work in the world. Now, I'm in a home right now that isn't my home. It is 1,100 square feet, but it is cool and funky, not funky in a bad way, funky in an artistic way. It has these beautiful trees around it. It's in a place that is full of lots of love and light and creativity here in Asheville. And so, it's not me living in my 3,000 square foot house on the Sound, but it still has beauty. It still has the essence. It's holding me. It's the perfect house, actually, in place for me to be while I'm making this move professionally and the focus with my websites and different things. And physically, for me in my body, I need good food. I need happy food, healthy food that is happy and healthy. So part of choosing to be where I'm at right now is I have a lot of access to healthy, organic, happy meat, happy food. That's part of what sustains and supports my radiance. So see, this is very practical. So I'm going to give you these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different realms. And then I'll give you a 7th bonus one that's going to help you. And I want you to take these in and then put them into the rhythm of your, journal on them in your morning practice, journal on them in the evening when you're like, I don't know what to do. I could start work right now. Oh, I don't know what to do. I could watch Netflix right now and be like, oh, I'm going to do that thing that Christine talked about. I'm actually going to put this in my journal. And that's the process of co-creation with the universe. Right? Okay, so we have the physical body and the physical material. What supports and sustains your radiance? Okay, the third part. What supports and sustains your radiance mentally? So you can even close your eyes, put your hand on your head, or just what supports you to be clear and have insight and intuition and that clarity. What supports you at a mental level, supports that mental mind to be radiant, clear. And then moving over to the relational area. So number 4, relationally, and kind of again, just imagine you're standing in the center of this inquiry. What supports and sustains my radiance? I'm going to look over in the relational area and think about that and look at that in terms of the kinds of people you're connected to and the people that support you, So one of the things that supports my radiance is having practitioners. I have 7 different, my invitation is going to be to actually create what I call a radiance wheel out of this. And having at least 7 things on that radiance wheel that you use to structure and make choices all summer, all winter, depending on where you're at, all the rest of this year, maybe forever, but at least for the rest of this year. So one of my NRLPs is practitioners. And that kind of marries the physical body but all of them and people. I need great practitioners. So part of the reason I'm like, this is a good place for me to live is I found a massage therapist. I found a great acupuncturist, and they're both in the same office. And so I can go to them easily, and they need to be part of my support of my radiance on a regular rotation. So I see one of them on the new moon, I see one of them on the full moon. And I've been doing that ever since I got there. It's not negotiable for me to sustain my radiance. And because part of me being here was restoring my radiance. So I actually worked with them even more for the first 3 months I was here, and I was seeing one every other week. And I did that for 3 months from equinox, or was from solstice to equinox. And then I'm like, okay, I've restored. So kind of depending on how depleted your radiance is, mine was pretty depleted after moving and then going across the country and sleeping in 8 beds and spending time in the desert, which is very draining on my life force and my radiance. It's just not simpatico to my body system. But just restoring from 2.5 years of creating harmonizing places for people to come to stay harmonized, I was tired, and even tired before that. And so I did a pretty intensive 3-month restoring of radiance with those practitioners. But then I also, then in March equinox, because this is part of how we work in the rhythms, that's why we do the power pauses, I'm like, okay, I can pull back on that now. So when you think about the people, the relationships, think about it in terms of both who supports you, but also who surrounds you. And who is that both from a perspective of like personally, in your life, your anamkaras, people that you can hang out with, like those kinds of things, but also professionally, because we're not in the lone wolf time anymore. So what do you need to support that radiance? And then second to last is spirit. So again, standing in that question, what supports and sustains my radiance? Your spirit. What keeps your spirit lifted up? And the last one is heart. What keeps my heart open? And one of the best ways to look at spirit and heart is to remember, and here's kind of the bonus question, but this comes directly from the self-love teachings, and it's so potent, is to remember what has brought you joy, what brings you joy. So remember that radiance is about lightening up and lifting up. You need things that lift you up and lighten you up. And when you look at heart and spirit, which then, because that's the soul and the subtle bodies and all of that, the pranic bodies, they will then affect the physical realm and the mental realm. Kind of like when we read Richard's reading, it's like we always think we have to start at the physical, and yes, but we really actually start in the mystical. And so these two are really important. And so I want you to spend, it's the juicy part, right? Of like, okay, so the way you do this remembrance is called the joy menu. And you go back in through your life, usually in decades is kind of good, and say, okay, so, and I'll ask you the questions right now. Like if you went back to you as a little person, before you were a teenager, what did you love to do? What lit you up and what lifts you up? And then do the same thing as a teenager or a person in your early 20s. Like what lifts you up and what lights you up? And you can go through all your decades that way. And again, this is Christine is giving me something other to do in my process, this is co-creativity in your bookend process, in your mornings, in your evenings, and or something to do on the weekends as you're winding down and downshifting, or something even to do on Monday morning versus just running into the week. Don't just listen to the podcast. Make this real. And if you're like, I can't do that, then come to the Flow Power Pause, because we're going to do some of this work together and how we actually create and focus. So sometimes we need structure to help us. But this is not theoretical. This is super practical. And so, like, for example, for me, since I was a little person, I've loved creativity. Like I walked around I was the marker girl. I always had markers. And you can also ask, like, what have you been really desiring to do but not have space for that would really bring you joy? So one of my 7 that goes on my radiance wheel is pottery. I've been wanting to do pottery for a very long time. I started it post 2020. And then, when the pandemic shut everything down, there went pottery. So one of the other reasons I moved here is because there's I'm taking 2 pottery classes now, and it just lifts me up. I do one on a Wednesday morning, which is a way that I break out of the Monday through Friday grind, and I have my space morning. So I do that from 10 to 12:30. I'm doing another one on Saturday this summer to really lighten me up. And I go there without having to be profitable or produce. I just let myself play, which is another one is that's for all of us that will lighten us up, is play as one of the things on your Radiance wheel. And how do you like to play? So one way I like to play is I love to go to fun concerts and things that are happening with friends. So in June, when I saw Michael Franti was coming, and there's this other thing that's happening called the Honey Fest here. And I love honey and I love bees. And I'm like, let's go to that. That will be play. So I have those on my calendar for Sunday and for a Saturday. And so they're in the space. It's creating the structure for me. So do you see how this starts to happen where it's you don't have to go out now and think, oh, I have to make sure I'm tending to my radiance. You do this pre-work with me, this pre-exploration, this pre-part, and then be like, oh, okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to put that inquiry in the center. You're going to take all these different parts that I talked about, the physical body, the material physical, the mental, the relational, the spirit, the heart, remembering over your course of your life what has lights you up and lifts you up, because that's where the joy comes from. And it's also that gets the heaviness off of you. And journal that all out. And then if you want to take it and make it practical, the final step, I'm kind of giving you a mini workshop, you all hear. This is one of the workshops I do with people when I'm doing this in person with people. But that's create a radiance wheel. So basically mine looks like a flower as the center point, and it says, sustaining and supporting my radiance, or just my radiance. And then I drew 7 petals. And in those 7 petals, I put the 7 things that I'm saying yes to putting into a cyclical rhythm in my life. I also put a stem on the flower this year. So there's pottery, practitioners, play, plants is another one. I went out and I bought a bunch of plants and I water them once a week or twice a week. And I talk to them and they all have names. And just the act of watering them and having them around and them being mine, even though I'm not in my own home, makes a big difference to me. It supports my radiance. So that would be the step to take it to. Your radiance wheel. You know what? I'll put it up on the Feminine Wisdom Cafe. So just so you all know, this podcast and all the podcasts are always posted up on the Feminine Wisdom Cafe. So you can always go there too. And usually there's a conversation that takes place that same week or the week after that is related to whatever the podcast topic is. So we'll put something up there about what supports and sustains our radiance so you can be inspired by other people. I'll post up my radiance wheel. We'll do it that way. And if you're not connected there, it's free. It's on Mighty Networks. Just go to femininewisdomcafe.com and you have to just put your name and email in there and answer a few questions, because we got spam botted with a bunch of people who are not acting from their radiance. So come on over there. All right. So big breath, take a deep inhale in, feel that center light, feel those deep roots going down, feel the light all around you. And then we'll, in the series, go to what's draining and depleting your radiance. I think you'll be pretty surprised about that. And then after that, what do we do when we get mucked up and dragged down by the challenges in the world? And between now and then, 2 requests. One is what can really help me bring more radiance to the world is if you could give a review of this podcast, which you can do in the show on your app, or go to iTunes and give a review. It helps more people find it. And or give a review, which is super helpful right now, of the Overwhelmed and Over It book, so that more people can find it. It's a little bit behind the veil and we're wanting to shine light on it because there's so much in there. And if you purchase the book from Amazon or haven't purchased it yet, that's one of the best ways to get it to be seen. But from wherever you've purchased at, to make a review would be super lovely. And then the other part is as I always like to end with, just be an elevator. Take what you're hearing here and share this with one other person, this podcast with one other person in your life that you can even talk to. You can share with each other, like what drains your radiance, what supports your radiance. And then you're inviting that person into a conversation, and you're actually elevating the world and elevating yourselves. And this is one of the ways that all humans elevate, when we feel connected. So those are my requests, and that is my inspiration. And I look forward to this journey of staying light this summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, and the winter in the Southern, or whenever you're listening to this. Thank you so much for being here, and sending you off with much love.
Wow. Christine just gave us so much wisdom to contemplate and conversate on. So let's just recap the first inquiry of our season of light, and then I have an invitation for you. So the inquiry for this week is, what sustains my radiance? And I encourage you to write this down somewhere, in your journal if you have one, on a piece of paper, but really write it down. The act of writing makes a big difference. And then allow yourself some space to write down whatever flows when you contemplate this inquiry. And you can come back to it throughout the days and throughout the week. Have it with you on your desk, your bedside table. And remember the distinction between inquiry and question. A question requires an answer. An inquiry opens up space for reflection and receiving of wisdom from your own heart, an embodied inner knowing from the earth, from the universe. It's so much more expansive than question and answer. Okay, so that's the inquiry to play with. What sustains my radiance? And now an invitation. For all you wise beings out there who feel called to go deeper, I invite you to join us for this year's mid-year power pause, which we call FLOW, and that stands for Focus Your Life Force on What Matters. Registration is open now at www.flowpowerpause.com, and we begin the day before solstice on June 19th. So, okay, what is a power pause? In cyclical living and in co-creating, we pause at the quarter points of the year, which are the equinoxes in March and September and the solstices in December and June. This is a time to pause, reflect, recognize, and receive all that we've done and become, both personally and professionally, in all the realms of our lives. And then we get to choose where to focus and give our life force for the upcoming months. It's a powerful practice to support you in focusing your life force on what matters in all realms of your life. Your overall well-being, your career or business and the work you do in the world, your relationships, and your desires and intentions, which in turn will 100% amplify your radiance. For me, the mid-year power pause gives me permission to slow down and really recognize and celebrate all that I've already done and become this first half of the year. And as a recovering overachiever, perfectionist, and just plain human being on the planet at this time, if I don't pause to reflect, I don't really integrate the experiences I've had. I don't appreciate all that I've given my life force to already, and I tend to feel pressure and put pressure on myself to do more and squeeze more into the remaining months of the year. Oof, just describing that makes me hold my breath. So let's all take a deep breath. Yeah, the power pauses are like that, like a big, deep, nourishing breath, and then a long, releasing exhale. And the power pauses are also an opportunity to gather with the Feminine Wisdom Way community. And when wise beings gather, shift happens. And we hope that you'll join us this June and July. You can go to www.flowpowerpause.com to view the invitation and register. And we'll put that link in the show notes as well. Okay, wise beings. Thank you for being with us today for episode 1 of the Season of Light. Remember, when we lead from our feminine energy, supported by our masculine energy, we grow through connection. The Feminine Power Time podcast grows through connection too. So, 2 requests that can help us support more wise beings doing good work in the world to stay light. Number 1, review and rate the podcast. Just go to the show in your podcast app, scroll down, and you can rate and type in just a genuine review on what you receive from Feminine Power Time. It helps so much to get the podcast out there and into the ears and awareness of more people. And then share this podcast episode with another friend. You can forward it right from your app or however you're tuning in, and invite that person to connect and conversate on this week's inquiry, what sustains your radiance? Because it's in that conversation that more wisdom is able to emerge for you and for whoever it is that you're connecting with. And then tune in next week when we'll explore together what drains your radiance. So we can each take some simple acts of self-advocacy to support our light to stay bright. I'm looking forward to being with you again, sending you all out with much love.